Hello, my name is Ramsey Meeklum, a PhD student from the University of Strathclyde. Thank you for joining us today to hear about our work investigating the acceptability of completing digital quality of life measures during routine hemodialysis treatment. This work was conducted by myself and my co-authors Mark Dunlop, Karen Stevenson, David Trinsmore, Peter Thompson, Sabine McCars, and Matt Millie-Boomerang. For some context, this work was completed in Scotland's largest health board, NHS Greater Glasgow and Clyde, and followed a mixed study design, which we'll touch on soon. As you can see, we mixed qualitative and quantitative methods to produce design considerations for the future. Advanced chronic kidney disease is a serious and common medical condition with significant treatment choices, each incurring varying levels of high treatment burden and reduced quality of life. One such treatment choice is hemodialysis, the mechanical filtration of blood. Hemodialysis treatment varies with vascular access, which is required for the patient to connect to the machine which filters their blood. A better understanding of the patient's views on vascular access options and the impact on quality of life is critical for informing and optimizing care, resulting in the development of a vascular access specific quality of life measure, or VASQUAL, by our co-authors. However, capturing this data may also pose complications for the patient, especially mid-treatment. So we wish to assess the acceptability of collecting this data in a digital format. Our study used a mixed methods design, combining qualitative interviews with patients and clinicians involved in the capture quality of data in clinic, as well as the data analysis of quantitative questionnaire completion rates and time for completion. As you can see, we began with patient interviews, which informed the design of the VASQUAL, which then led to VASQUAL validation, a 6-week period of patients completing the VASQUAL and two other quality of life measures, the EQ5D and SF36 as per schedule. Finally, interviews were held after the validation period to elicit clinician observations of patients during the study. And just to show you an example, we have each quality of life questionnaire and how it appeared on our app on an Android tablet. So here we have the vascular access quality of life measure, the Likert scale, EQ5D5L, which was a Likert scale but using statement anchors as buttons, and the 36-item short form survey, which varied between Likert scales and multi-matrix responses. So just down here you can see the beginning of one of these, and this was common in the SF36 for the question format to change. So our study looked at both qualitative and quantitative data. The patient and clinician interviews were transcribed and informatically analysed, and the quantitative completion rates and times for each quality of life measure and normalised patient demographics were linked and compared. So for example, we would look at weeks 1, 2, 4 and 6 of the EQ5D, as this was the schedule for completion in our VASQUAL validation study. So we have some patient characteristics from our results. A total of 101 patients participated in the VASQUAL study. 55 were male, 46 female. The average age was 59. And a subset of 23 patients participated in the qualitative interviews. For informatic analysis, the following themes were formed, which are described in detail in our paper. So to touch on these very quickly, we have understanding and interpreting information, which was the main concern of the patient interviews and how patients understood the VASQUAL, emotionally loaded or difficult questions, layout and interface design, relevance to patient and difficulty, question design, and distractions and interruptions. The next part of our results will look at the quantitative data analysis, and for that we want to pay attention to the layout and interface design, so how the questions were presented on a digital tablet and how they were interacted with, as well as the emotionally loaded or difficult questions where patients would find questions either very difficult to consider and interpret, or they were quite sensitive topics and required more thought. So our quality of life measures and completion times to determine if there was any evidence of a learning curve or boredom. The total time to complete each questionnaire was compared between weeks 1 and 6. There were no trends in relation to response times, either overall or by patient characteristics, including age or deprivation category, which is the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, i.e. most deprived versus least deprived. As well as overall completion time, we were interested in time spent to complete individual questions of each questionnaire. Given the widely differing number of questions, the percent of the total completion time each question took was calculated and thus allows for comparison across all three measures. It had been postulated that for all three measures, the first question would take longer than the rest, as this is the first question patients are introduced to, and it takes time to familiarise and know what to expect. However, each questionnaire then went on to behave differently in terms of response times and time taken to complete each question. So for example, the SF36, it's not immediately clear, but you can see there is a trend of a spike every so often. So we have question 3, 13, 17, 20, 23, 32, and 33. And this also occurred in EQ5D question 6. And the reason for this is there is a change in format. The question type or presentation of the question would change. So as we saw in an example earlier, the question 1 and 2 were 5-point Likert scale responses and then question 3 changes to a multi-matrix where there are several questions asked in regards to the same prompt. And this occurs a lot in SF36 where the format changes, and this caused some frustration and confusion for patients. In EQ5D, it goes from a 5-point Likert scale to an analog scale. And there is also presentation of instructions, so this would cause a slight delay in patients completing these questionnaires. Another example is in the VASCO. Question 1 took quite a while, and there seems to be a fairly level completion rate, except for question 8. And when question 8 was discussed in the interviews, it was marked as a question that patients would often find difficult or challenging to consider, because it essentially asks patients how involved they feel in their care. And so we believe that there was a slight pause in terms of thinking, how involved am I in my care? It's a sensitive topic in regards of it gets them to think. To conclude, we found that single question formats were better than matrix question formats, and consistency in format and layout was key. The situation of a patient with chronic kidney disease and high treatment burden can result in binary responses. So in this case, we mean patients would often, if they were able to attend treatment and go home, it was fine. And it's the sense of, if nothing's broke, don't fix it. It's fine unless something's wrong. And questions may appear irrelevant to them. So for example, when a patient was asked about how their vascular access impacted on their hobbies at home, they noted that they had to give up a sport, but they understood that they couldn't continue that sport and continue to maintain their vascular access. And so they'd made peace with, in order to live their life or prolong their life through hemodialysis treatment and a vascular access, some things had to go. And they didn't see this as much as an impact on their quality of life. They'd made their peace with this, if you understand what I'm trying to say. And patients preferred open responses over Likert scales. However, clinicians noted that they found this harder to analyse and interpret and preferred closed responses such as Likert scales, which you're able to process as a number of, say, 1 to 7. Statement anchors, such as those in the EQ5D, were an acceptable compromise with clinicians and patients. So again, the EQ5D has 5 responses, but rather than numbers, which are hard for patients to relate to, it has statements. Thank you for your attention today. Please feel free to ask questions or get in touch via my email below or my Twitter. And again, thank you for your time.